Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be in the city of Rome, and I'm really thankful to the committee for inviting me to share some of my experience, especially about such a interesting topic. I think we all will really agree that in the last few years, the pulse field ablation has been becoming a mainstay, I would say, at least in majority of the countries. I know in US, getting the FDA approval has been an issue. So, and even in Asia, especially like countries like India or South Asia, it may not be available, but I'm confident that in the coming few years, it will be coming. We always need to understand what's the real problem. And that's what I will try to share the journey. So these are my disclosure slides. And the first thing always comes to our mind is why atrial fibrillation? Why am I talking about this? Is it because it is getting featured on the Time magazine, on Forbes, or these big journals? No, it's the complication which is associated. So, for example, this is an interesting study which showed that, the atrial fibrillation incidence-wise and all, it may not be so much, but when we try to talk about the mortality and the morbidity which is associated with them, it is quite a lot significant. In fact, research has shown again and again that no doubt prevention is better than cure. I think this is something which everyone will agree that this is what was taught in our early days of medicine, isn't it? And especially for atrial fibrillation, a lot of studies have been showing that atrial fibrillation ablation is far more better compared to the medical treatment, which a lot of our colleagues may still believe in, I would say. Uh, Definitely the guidelines or the expert consensus has changed for that. And like the typical interventional cardiology, time is muscle, even in arrhythmias. And why I do say it like this, because atrial fibrillation begets itself. Begets itself means, for example, initially it will always be milder form, paroxysmal. The paroxysmal will turn to persistent. The persistent will finally become chronic or even more complex form. And indeed, it is more difficult not only to ablate or to take care of the more advanced forms. So that's why I always say to our young doctors, time is muscle, not just in interventional cardiology, but also in arrhythmias. I think we all will recognize this, that, our phones has been becoming smarter and better with each and every model. And this was one of the ablation models which I was working at Maastricht, where I did my PhD and my fellowship as well. So this is the rough diagram, I would say, in which we're trying to see the different ablation effects, and believe me, it's not as easy as it may sound. So later on, I was also here as well, trying to share my results. Is the editor of New England Journal of Medicine, as you may see over here. And with passage of time, definitely a lot many more new technologies are available now for ablation. We have evolved from the laser, the HIFU balloon, the high intensity frequency ultrasound, or the radiofrequency balloon as well. And I hope you all may recall those days when smoking used to be a fashion, isn't it? There used to be fancy advertisements which used to pop our screen. I know there may be a few people who may not even remember, statements like, give your throat a vacation, smoke a fresh cigarette. Can anyone talk like this now? No. They will be kicked out. Their license will be, in fact, taken. What about this statement? More doctors smoke Camels than other cigarette. Advertisements like this. Can anyone believe them? So things do change. So I recall vividly with my in charge, my mentor supervisor, Dr. Timmermans, when we worked initially, like hemoptysis is secondary to cryo balloon. Everyone was like, oh, no, what happens? This is not a thing. But when we looked at the data, we were able to show that, yes, it happens. Similarly, um, I'm sure a lot of would have had sandwich, for your breakfast. So small thing in the sandwich making. I think you all will agree that the areas which are in good contact of while making the sandwich or the toast, they turn to cook well, which you can see in these brown spots, and the areas which is not in good contact, they tend to remain whitish. Why I'm talking about sandwich making? Same thing happens even during ablation procedure. So this, you know, wisdom which has been there about sandwich making, it took long time about the contact force. So radiofrequency, we have been using it since decades. And only last decade, like I would say around, last decade, around 2010, 12, we were able to show as well, like, look, contact force indeed is not just an important factor for endocardial ablation, but even in the epicardial ablation as well. With Dr. Peter Looscoat from Netherlands, we did research and we were able to show the importance from the epicardial force as well. And since then, what has happened is there are a lot of newer technologies which has been coming up as well, as you may see, the ultra low temperature probe, or this lattice tip RF as well, which has been coming up. But it is good to, of course, to go through these newer technologies, but it takes a while to know their side effects. Same thing has been happening is pulsed field ablation, no doubt. It is an emerging technique for AFib ablation, which utilizes the high voltage electric fields to create the lesions in cardiac tissue with minimal thermal damage. And understanding the potential, it takes a while because since it's CE approval, by the EMA, European Medical Agency, it was just a few years ago. So I always say it like this, even till now, there are not many clinical studies which have shown or which have studied, in a golden words. Golden words, I say it like this: prospective, randomized, multicentric, and big volume. Now those studies are coming up, and this is why more studies are able to show the side effects as well. This is a beautiful slide. Why I say it like this? Because I remember a decade ago, there were more than 30 companies which were working on the different components for making the pulsed field ablation. Now, they are barely a handful. And these are some of those fighters, I would say, if they have evolved in the last decade. And if I can use my economics background, I can see it like this: is what had happened is no one wants to be left out. Why no one wants to be left out? Why I'm talking about this is because for cryoballoon, there was almost a decade, there were no dominant players which were there. And yes, they did make the benefit out of it. Polarex did come from Boston Scientific, but later on, after almost a decade. So that's why no one wants to be left out. Everyone has been launching their products and all. Sometimes they have been a little bit premature launch without, I would say, too much of clinical studies, many more patients and all. And that is where the problem comes. In fact, Johnson & Johnson, I'm sure everyone may know about them, that they announced a temporary pause in using the variables due to the cerebral vascular accidents when they wanted to work to understand the root cause of the issue. And in fact, there was also a recall following the FDA approval in last year itself, 2024. The Johnson & Johnson Medtech first gained the FDA approval for the Farapulse PFA system barely in November 2024. The agency had previously approved Medtronic's Pulse Select and also the Affera system, along with Boston Scientific's Farapulse system. And the FDA made its decision after reviewing the data from the ADMIRE clinical trial, which included 277 patients who underwent treatment with the Farapulse system throughout the United States. And the study linked PFA with Farapulse to acute procedural success, although in 100%. Sounds good, isn't it? But there were problems, and cardiologists do question the FDA's approval process for high-risk medical devices. No doubt, the Johnson & Johnson has resumed the PFA rollout after stopping to review the safety concerns. And definitely, if someone will go through the data, one can see that the post-stroke follow-up care is considerably worse for women than men. And Johnson & Johnson has been, I would say, gracious enough to pause the use of FDA-approved PFA system to investigate the patient complications. When we are trying to understand all these things, it is important for us to understand the mechanism. Why or how does it happen? So this unique technology tends to disrupt the cell membrane using the electric fields to achieve the ablation without excessive thermal injury. Not only this method targets the specific cardiac tissues while preserving the surrounding structures. In fact, understanding the mechanism also helps to clarify the potential complications which is associated with the technique. In fact, let me give you one more practical example. In fact, the avant-garde trial using the Farapulse pulsed field ablation clinical trial was also temporarily paused. And when people were questioning what was the reason for that, nothing much was said. So look at this beautiful poster again. No reported thermal complications. Sounds beautiful, isn't it? Manifest 17K registry. But if you'll try to go deeper, if you'll try to look at the details of what do we notice that there were complications like the coronary arterial spasm, I would say in almost 25 patients. There were 5 patients again with hemolysis-related acute renal failure, which needed temporary hemodialysis. In fact, this is another beautiful equipment from Abbott, the Volt Pulsed Field Ablation. The system did show silent cerebral lesions in 9.4% patients. In fact, during this EU-PORIA registry, 7 transient ischemic attacks and 1 fatal stroke patient was noticed. Does this ring a bell? Can we ignore this? I think we can't ignore this. Why I'm talking like this? Because atrial fibrillation, yes, it doubles the risk of dementia, triples the risk of heart failure, quadruples the risk of stroke, quadruple to 5 times. But there's not acute mortality, there is long-term mortality. So we need to ensure that during the ablation procedure, if we can make safety as a priority for these patients. In fact, our understanding of the pulsed field ablation can also be questioned. Why I'm talking? Because being a highly engineered and of a waveform which consists of multiple critical factors. I'm talking like the pulse characteristics, the polarity, the length, the width, the interface, pause, the pulse train parameters like the number of pulse, frequency, voltage, and even the catheter design, like the electrode size, spacing, they all tend to influence the waveform interaction with the tissue and nearby structures. In fact, when they are combined with the catheter design, these intricacies complicate how the pulsed field ablation will affect the tissue and may also potentially interfere with adjacent unintended, not just tissue, the cells, and also the other proteins in the plant. In fact, as we go improve more and more of our timing with this unique technology, our understanding is improving as well. In fact, this PFA tends to use the rapid electrical pulses not only to create pores in the cell membranes and selectively target the cardiac myocytes, also minimizing the damage to the nearby structures, like the phrenic nerve, pulsed pulmonary veins. And so that sounds really good, wow, that this is so cardioselective. But there are problems. And there are a lot of things as well. There are a lot of multiple factors, the PFA parameters, which are still a little bit, I would say, like unexplored. So more and more factors are coming up as well. And that is why we need to be able to describe them well. So for example, the interface delay, the pulse delay, the pulse cycle, the duty cycle, the high frequency, the biphasic pulse with the short interface pulse and long interface pulse delay appear optimal. So I think I would really recommend to the industry, if possible, to standardize not just the terminology and also the parameters, which is reported and needed to ensure the transparency and compatibility. If it is not, till then, problems will continue to happen. And there is no doubt all these problems are happening. And we are seeing more and more problems. So for example, just to facilitate the transparency and promote research and the disclosable Pulse parameters are detailed above, I think I would really suggest that an application should be described like, for example, there were 7 bipolar applications, biphasic pulse trains over 5 seconds, with each train, for example, consisting of 20 pulses with a pulse width of 1 millisecond and an interface delay of 2 microseconds and the interpulse delay of 100 microseconds, and the voltage amplitude of the pulses was 2000 volts. For example, baseline to speak, using square waveforms. And why is it important? Why am I trying to go too much into details? Yes, it may sound a little bit boring to a lot of the people. We will think like, why the hell are we talking like this and all? Because if we are thinking of avoiding the complications, we will have to go into details. And we know that the awareness of these complications can aid in not only prompt identification and management, but also with no tissue contact, the risk of hemolysis increases with this technology. And it is established that the greater the electric field applied, the longer the exposure time. And in fact, the greater the possibility of thermal ablation. That's the reason, in fact, since the impact of the electric pulse can change, including reversible electroporation, irreversible electroporation, thermal damage, longer pulse durations, and the higher voltages can also increase the likelihood of causing the irreversible damage and the potential thermal effects. In fact, that is why it can also translate into severe damages as well. And that's why I always say that one needs to not only monitor, but also be ready for immediate interventions. Similarly, complications like vascular injuries, they may also occur. It's not I would say, a holy procedure or something like that. The problems don't happen. And during the manipulation and all, problems do happen. And signs like hematoma formation or bleeding at the access site as well tends to happen. So that's why I always suggest that if possible to use the ultrasound guidance for that. And similarly, the thromboembolic effects like stroke due to the thrombus formation can happen. And we know that our own AFib patients are having a higher risk to develop these complications. And definitely one needs to really be specific, be about the anticoagulation strategies to help decrease these complications. No doubt, the free nerve paralysis, which can lead to diaphragmatic paralysis and respiratory complications, tend to be much lesser with pulsed field ablation, but one needs to maintain an eye as well for this. And careful mapping and energy titration can definitely help the free nerve function. Esophageal injuries is a rare but serious complication which may be associated. We know there has been some serious issues of atrial esophageal fistulas with other energy sources as well later on in the path. So real-time imaging and energy modulation is key to avoid any esophageal damage. And we always need to keep an eye so that early detection of the complication is crucial to improve the patient outcomes. Yes, see, being invasive procedure, there can be complications and all. But what I'm trying to tell is we need to be a little bit extra careful if when we monitor the vital signs and patient feedback, it can aid in the timely intervention. And establishing the protocols for recognizing signs of complication can enhance the safety for sure. And post-procedural monitoring as well needs to be ensured. For example, it's not that once the patient procedure is done, that finished. No, they need to be monitored on an immediate basis as well, and regular echocardiograms or imaging tools, incorporating them in the protocols is also very important. And one of the important things which we all should not forget about is the patient education. Educating the patients about potential complications can also improve their understanding and compliance. And communication is definitely. So I always advise to my colleagues or to the friends and all as well, or to some of the companies, that not only a multidisciplinary team approach can enhance the management of complications, but also involve our own other colleagues, like uh, I'm talking is our nursing colleagues, the paramedical staff members, the physiologists. So definitely studies have shown that the team collaboration can lead to improved decision-making and patient outcomes. A lot of research is already going on. New technologies, tools are being developed to enhance the safety. And definitely clinical trials are coming up with a lot of good studies and all. And I'm confident with advancements in the technologies, which is aimed at minimizing complications, like improved catheter design to increase the precision during the procedure, is also something important. And to summarize, I feel that PFA is a great technology. It has wonderful application. It has definitely been revolutionizing the way in which we are able to use this tool. And I'm confident if we monitor the tool and the technology in a better way, with better understanding, I think we will be able to understand and take care of the complications in a better way. And I think industries also need to participate with open arms, with open thinking, to help ensure that the complications are taken well care of. And we need to continue to accumulate the data as well. For example, that how these complications are happening, how we can accumulate them together so that we can get insights into the complications and also their management. And learning from experience can definitely guide the best practices in clinical settings. And an analysis of outcomes will help not only to refine the technologies, but also to improve the patient care as well. And no doubt that when we engage in discussions about complications, it will foster a collaborative learning environment to address not only for clarification, but also deeper understanding of the tool and also the disease as well. And I really feel, no doubt, together we can do it for sure. So thank you so much. Really great pleasure for sharing my experience, and I'll be more than happy to take any questions if there are.